Morning. My name is Gene Brian Fisher. I'm the CEO of Mango Farms LLC, one of many limited liability corporation and farms that provide organic produce for a number of locations, including Chuck's Produce, Clark County Food Bank, King County Food Bank, Farmers Market, and a number of other locations. We're located in Clark County. Our history for the last 22 years in Southwest Washington has been growing, leasing, and buying property, and getting it certified to grow organic produce. The Fisher Trong family own and lease the vast majority of it, and over the last 22 years, there's been a transition from producing produce to a high demand for organically and climatically acclimated seeds. And so that's something new to us, and so we've been trying to meet that demand recently. Climatized seeds are seeds that have basically been selected over. We grow hundreds and hundreds of thousands of plants, and the ones that do the best in the climate, existing climate, are selected to produce seeds, and that's done over and over again until you have a climatized seed. It's a natural self-selecting process. There's no radiation, there's no chemical, alterations, there's no genetic manipulations. Recently, we've lost some lost shares in produce. We have a lot of competitors. Interestingly enough, our competitors have been purchasing our seeds, demanding or requesting they purchase our seeds because our seeds are in high demand and very desirable. They produce fantastic crops and produce. We're interested in obtaining some grants, obviously, and our brand equity right now, we have significant brand equity with the produce, very little with the seeds. That's something new to us. We have localized brand awareness and distribution systems. We have no intention of going national or international right now. And we're hoping to increase that brand equity primarily in the climatized seed area. We've had significant demand from seed companies, seed distributors, seed catalogs, as well as local and regional farms asking for climatized seeds for their crops. Our competitors, Suave Island Farms, BZ Farms, as well as Velvet Acres. BZ Farms, I would say, is probably one of our biggest competitors, but none of these farms actually produce seeds. They do produce starts like we produce starts, and they produce produce. Some of them much more efficient at doing that, and they have fantastic programs that are both state and federally funded, but they do not produce seeds, and all three of them have requested seeds at some point from us. So when we look at marketing communication organization, ad organization systems, the advantage, primarily we're looking at in-house, in-house because it keeps it local, and we have a lot of expertise in specific fields related to organic organisms and the hybridization and climatization of those organisms. And to take it outside, we'd have to either pay for some very expensive experts, or we would lose some edge because the individuals wouldn't have that skill set. The disadvantage is we don't get as broad of scope or experience in our marketing and advertising because we keep it in-house. So that's kind of a trade-off. Agency compensation methodology. For us, it would be probably directly related to a fixed percentage of sales. That way we're small, so we can't afford huge amounts or just distribute it, you know, in hopes that there's something. So it would probably be directly connected to like 5% of total sales. Specialized services, we desperately need some specialized services in digital agencies, specifically, you know, online web banking, secure banking, shopping carts, secure purchasing, hyperlinks, websites. I mean, my staff and I have done some of this work, but obviously that's not our forte, and there's a steep learning curve, especially today with web security being a significant issue. So obviously some of these specialized services are going to have to be outsourced through a secondary agency or a tertiary agency. Collateral services, marketing and research, obviously the resources that we have are localized, and we have no intention at this point of going national or international. So we do have some research to leverage off of, but the truth is, the reality is that we're going to have to outsource that to be more effective and not to have a significant bias in the data. Consumer decision making process, source of the problem, customers' new need or want. So the new need or want obviously is acclimatized seeds, and most of those desires are not from individuals. Most of those are commercial, and we have a very little experience dealing with commercial interests and contracts. And so instead of selling to a customer at farmer's market or somebody that's coming onto the farm and picking their own, or perhaps special chefs, you know, from Portland or Seattle, flying down or driving down and hand picking their produce. Now we're talking about dealing with, you know, multi-million or multi-billion-dollar corporations that are looking for, you know, climatized seeds, and they've targeted us to provide some of those for them, and that requires, you know, attorneys and contracts and lawyers and, you know, agreements. So the source of some of that is going to be outsourcing, obviously. Information searches, internal and external customers who in prior years purchase products. So our internal and external searches are fundamentally our local history, and that leaves us at a deficit. So obviously at some point we're looking at doing, our customers have chosen to seek us out to produce this new seed market, and so they have already done some of that internal and external research. There's a lot of research externally on GMO and the adverse effects, you know, carcinogenic effects, and fundamentally GMO products they have genes that are spliced into them that produce not only internally in the plants are a pesticide and a herbicide. So instead of spraying them with the pesticide or herbicide, the plants actually produce their own pesticides and herbicides. So they're a very invasive species, and unfortunately, the digestive system doesn't get rid of that. So there's a horrendous risk to human health when consuming products of a GMO, genetically modified organism. And even if it's a secondary or tertiary consumption, where they fed it to cattle and the cattle consumed it, and and the adipose tissue, the fatty tissue of the cow when it was slaughtered was again fed to a human, even if it was raised to 169 degrees and cooked properly, the proteins may not be transferring over to the human being, but the pesticides are. So there are significant risks. So external data is there, and the internal data, which is our customers' own experiences and observations of our field versus their field, and also the satisfaction of the customers and the taste is pretty obvious. Alternative valuations. There's a lot of literature and data, and there's significant sources of information related to alternative data. I would be very careful about looking at proprietary information from like Monsanto's, because they self-regulate. I would look more towards international, international meta-analysis, where they take not only government agencies but international agencies and combine that research along with the corporation's research, and that would be a good alternative source for evaluation. And I think that's where it's going. That's why there's such a desire for it. Purchase decisions. Ultimately, genetic variability of the seed and the crop. Purchase decisions are primarily based, and the desire to plant the seeds is primarily monetarily based, meaning that you can make more money selling organic produce. People have there's a higher demand for organic produce, and the taste is better, obviously, which is a motivator. The health risks are lower, and even the medical industry is now promoting organic produce, organic sources, primarily because it interferes with medications that patients might be on or their recovery after surgery. So there's a lot of purchasing decisions to be made, not only just health and observations and taste, but data and research that support that. Sources of the problem. My computer sliding. There we go. So when we talk about environmental influences and culture, organic or non-GMO populations, right now there's a huge portion of the population that support genetic diversity and are very concerned about the health outcomes of themselves and their children, and the adverse health outcomes related to genetically modified organisms. So there's actually a culture built around that. And there's also a subculture, specifically some of the millennials, that have really pushed significant, the millennials have really pushed the boundaries as to knowing and understanding what you're consuming and the outcomes, the health outcomes of that consumption. And I would say that's a subculture in and of itself. A social class. Well, obviously, people who have a significant amount of income and can choose to afford to choose or select the types of produce, and I would say middle class to upper middle class would be the social class that these products are being sold to. But I would also say that due to the fact that anything that's not consumed or sold fresh is also being donated to food banks, I would say that the social class is pretty we donate more than 80 tons of produce to nonprofits and to food banks in Clark County each year. So I would say that the social class is far spread and worldwide, but as far as purchasing the products, most likely the seeds specifically would be, a high-end managers and greenhouse owners and individuals looking to cater to a higher end customer, upper middle class customer, and so they're going to have the resources to purchase those seeds. And generally, a pound of seeds, say for tomatoes, is about $2,000 is what we sell that for. Situational determinants: desire to produce and or consume non-GMO products, point of sale, health, organic farmers markets, seed suppliers, ads. Social determinants, I would say social determinants surround, the adverse, the avoiding adverse health effects of consuming GMOs and deciding to not only support organic produce, but also biological diversity. Marketing objectives. I would say our marketing objective is to increase the target market's awareness by approximately 5% each quarter. And when I talk about target market, that would be the target market specifically related to the sales of the seeds, the climatized organic seeds, and that would be the objective would be to communicate and communicate the difference and differentiate between a GMO product and an organic or a acclimatized seed, and not only the health benefits, but also, the economic benefits, as well as the consumer benefits and distribution benefits. Right now, we're on the verge of some potential significant legislation that may really restrict how you define organic and non-organic, and we see those being, especially in supermarkets, they are mandated to state that is a GMO product. They can't just sell it as a tomato, or if it's organic, it has to be stated as organic and has to meet certain criteria. So there is a significant selling point, and they are communicating, not only legally communicating, but also communicating in various forums, through the price. They're communicating through the health benefits. They're communicating through the law. They're communicating through appeal. And when we start talking about appeal, really what we're talking about is the common fear of avoiding the adverse health effects of GMO. So a common fear is that genetically modified organisms can cause significant health problems, and have been statistically correlated with horrendous health outcomes. The execution style, I think our appeal is that it's a healthier solution, and it avoids the fear of potentially getting sick or having adverse outcomes from eating something that's genetically altered and should be a pesticide or herbicide. The execution style, I think what we're really talking about is a way of communicating to a mass public for inexpensive, through a means that's fairly inexpensive. And I think it would be great to talk using an audio like a voice of concern, a dramatization between a mother, a child, a daughter, and a son in a supermarket choosing, a chef salad for dinner, a healthy alternative. And so they choose a healthy alternative, and the mother grabs, just a plain old tomato that's not identified as non-organic, or as just a tomato and it's not organic, and the son starts pointing out and differentiating between the two. And she's talking about cost and he's talking about health issues. And you're going to pay for it one way or another, right? And so that would be the execution style. And a creative tactic would be the family meal, obviously, and purchase conversation, acquisition of the product. And a media plan and vehicle, I think, would be audio through the radio first. It would be the least expensive, and it's affordable for us. We're a small farm, can't afford $1 million advertisements on television. But it would be far-reaching, and it would be local, and that's kind of our market right now is local. Maybe regional, but definitely local. Product factor. Organically climatized seeds are genetically diverse and they have resistance from catastrophic failure. Anytime you have a genetically modified organism, really what's happening is someone's splicing in some genes, and they're trying to obtain an outcome that's more desirable than the previous. So they're trying to create resistance, or they're trying to create, an internal pesticide or an internal herbicide that makes the plants, the sole plant that actually grows in the dirt, and everything else gets, it becomes an invasive species fundamentally. Unfortunately, the chemicals that make it so successful at growing also make it detrimental to human existence. And so, that is a product factor when you compare and differentiate an organic climatized seed that's naturally selected to a genetically modified organism. Market factor is obviously GMO currently is being socially rejected. Fundamentally, walk into any supermarket in the United States, and there's a very clear, distinct line between what is and what is not organic. And there's a very distinct price differentiation between the two. And people are very aware of the potential risks of genetically modified organisms. And so that is a major marketing factor. Types of appeal, concern and fear, and execution style would be an audio voice concern, dramatization within a family at a supermarket. And creative tactic is a family conversation, an informative conversation, and maybe a little combative as well, between a mother, daughter, and son, talking about acquiring products for a chef salad for dinner. And the price differentiations as well as the health differentiations. And the broadcast vehicle being, the dramatization on the radio, local and possibly regional radio. And support media, the seed, I would say that we need to be printing something on the seed packages, as well as supporting our website and hyperlinking some of the research that supports the data on those websites, so that people, especially, commercial growers, can look at the data. What is the cost? How much? What are the outcomes? How many gallons of diesel and how many dollars, and what types of soil do you need, and do you need pesticides or not? And the comparison between those two, an honest look at it, and also an honest look at what they can sell it for in the market and what they can't, and whether or not they can have catastrophic crop failure. Because fundamentally, yes, GMO products grow fantastic, but they also are clones. So if one fails, they all fail. Reason for measuring effectiveness. Well, fundamentally, measuring effectiveness really measures the success, the market mix, as well as the efficiency of reaching the target market, and it's very important. A reason for not measuring that effectiveness might be cost. With a small farm, a small business, a small budget, it might not be a good idea to excessively measure or measure to begin with outcomes. It kind of depends on whether or not you see an increase in sales and revenue. Pre-test methods, I would say day after recall test would be a good pre-test, and possibly a post-test methodology. Running the commercial in front of somebody, running the dramatization, letting them listen to it, and then coming back a day later and saying, do you remember what the conversation was? What were they purchasing? What was the differentiation between the two products? What was the price break between the two products? Did it influence you? Were you informed about that? How would you feel if that was your daughter or son talking that way, and you were trying to prepare a meal? And would that argument support acquisition? Because really what we're doing is we're talking to the consumer to support the products that the purchasers of our seeds are manufacturing. So we're not only selling to the commercial farms, but we're looking at a tertiary acquisition that supports the acquisition of our seeds. And so the secondary market, I would say there is no secondary market at the moment. So possible cultural bias, I would say that in some areas there could be a significant cultural bias about acclimatizing seeds. For example, let's say I was trying to acclimatize seeds in Italy, and Italy is very culturally proud of their grapes and their tomatoes and things like that. It would be it would be a very sensitive area to go in and say I can improve that. So it would be one of those things where you have to be very situationally aware of the product that you're trying to sell or vend, and the history of the area or the product, like wines or grapes, that are being made in the wine. Or every area has a historical pride within the products that they produce. And if you're acclimatizing seeds and you're selling organic seeds and you're trying to improve the local stock, you might offer to improve the local stock and provide a service, ultimately selling those seeds, but you sure as heck wouldn't go in and say, hey, I have a better seed. And ethical implications, I would say there's a lot of ethical implications specifically related to what I just talked about, interfering with cultural history, and maybe even preserving the cultural history, the obligation to help preserve that cultural history and the products within that cultural history. And the pride, national and cultural pride, nationalism, and historic relevance of the indigenous seed stock. So one of the statistics that comes out of this, and this is one of the first slides as an example of the radio, the dramatization, is a girl, a mother, her son, and a young daughter, and they're choosing chef salad here. And the tagline says 99% of GMO, 99% of GMO plants internally produce pesticides or Bt toxins. And there's a citation. And the daughter says, "What's for dinner, Mom?" And Mom replies, "A healthy chef salad. Sounds good. Maybe with these ripe tomatoes." And the son, "Mom, use organic produce. It's healthier." Daughter, they cost more. Son, not if you consider the health effects and the quality of life. And we move on to the next slide. And they're looking at the organic produce here. And the tagline is a meta-analysis of 9,968 GMO research studies identified that 36.11% findings reported test subjects died, 16.67% suffered reproductive toxicity, and 8.33% carcinogenesis, and 38.89% adverse effects on biomarkers. What they're not saying is sexual reproduction and memory retention and a number of other things are also affected. But to go forward with this, the Sun replies, GMO products and produce are linked to hormonal, sexual, and reproductive disorders, carcinogenous, immune, nervous system, genetic and/or metabolic dysfunctions. There's a citation. Fundamentally, plants are genetically modified to internally produce pesticides and toxins to improve crop yields, which, when consumed, deposit into human fatty tissue and organs, resulting in health problems and birth defects. Citation. And Mother's response, is that why some crops are delegated as feed and not for human consumption? Son, yes. Fortunately, there is evidence that GMO byproducts and toxins continue to accumulate in human tissue, milk, and organs after consuming poultry, pork, and beef-fed GMO feeds. Daughter, why do organic produce? Why do the organic produce not look the same as the other produce? Son, GMO produce are fundamentally cloned, like organic, while organic produce remains biologically diverse and differentiated. Daughter, you mean healthy? Yes, diversity is healthy, says the mother. Tagline on the third depiction is meta-analysis of more than 9,968 studies has resulted in the assessment that serious adverse effects consuming GMO products include mortality, tumors, cancer, low fertility, diminished learning and reaction abilities, and organic deformation and organ deformation and anomalies. Mother's comment, but GMO is necessary to increase food production in order to feed a growing population. Son, true, GMO products increase crop yields, but their toxic effects on human populations and risk of catastrophic crop failure related to being genetically cloned make them an invasive species which hostily undermines biodiversity. There is speculation that GMO plant toxins are directly related to beehive collapse, which directly impacts pollination of all plants on Earth. Daughter, I don't like bees, but I love fruit and veggies. Mother, bees are the workforce that pollinate everything we eat, the flowers we grow, and the world we live in. Without bees, we would have no food on this planet. Son, exactly. So let's buy organic produce for our chef salad. I would like to thank you for listening to my 34-minute conversation, and I have included the citations in the last